Hello, it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and this is episode 230 in the week of 7 August 2022. We got body blows, TA428, Microsoft, Lazarus, GwisinLocker, Burger King, fraud in China, Nomad and Solana, and Jason Wood on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
Right now, everybody is talking about cryptocurrency, and the cyber criminals are hiding in the conversation. Cyber criminals use social engineering loaded with urgency and fear to successfully prey on your company, your employees, and your customers. Spear phishing is just one of the 13 types of email threats. Barracuda has identified 13 types and shows you how you can protect your company, your customers, and your reputation. Find out about the 13 email threat types and Barracuda email protection by going and getting your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
Monitoring and maintaining compliance is a never-ending struggle with a high price of failure. Firemon helps customers meet complex and varying compliance requirements. Firemon has fully customizable reporting, analytics, assessments, and dashboards to meet the compliance needs of any organization. With Firemon, compliance reports take a tenth of the time, and real-time continuous compliance eliminates the anxiety and headaches of audit preparation. Improve security outcomes by improving security operations with Firemon. Visit securityweekly.com/Firemon to learn more.
All right, well, it's Black Hat and DEF CON week, and some of our people are winging their way towards Las Vegas as we speak. Some of us didn't have sponsors this year, so we didn't get to go. Yes, I'm bitter, but I will sit at home on my front porch and drink Monkey 47 from the bottle and just yell at the local kids to get the hell off my lawn and wear a helmet before you bash your tiny brains out, you morons. I tell you, Morty, no, maybe that was a dream, and we're really at DEF CON, and I drank one of those 5 skull drinks at Frankie's and then sat in the sun for 4 hours. Okay, we'll walk it off. It's not real. It's imaginary hobos can't really hurt you. Oh, and anyway, welcome to the news. This week, a Chinese APT group, which doesn't have a cool name yet. They didn't have an article. It's called TA428, and it's associated with China. So I'm gonna call them Da Gongji. Da Gongji. Yeah, you have to say it like that. I won't tell you what it means. It's too much fun for me not to. But anyway, Kaspersky said that they had run a campaign that started back in January, and they used some new Windows malware to place backdoors in defense industry players in Eastern Europe. I'm not sure who these guys are working for or what they're after, but they're apparently Chinese. But according to the report, dozens of targets were compromised, and some even had their entire IT infrastructure taken over, since the APT was able to hijack systems which were being used to manage their security solutions. So, like when you plug that Windows laptop into the Cisco console port and then open RDP to the internet. Yeah, that kind of stuff, I guess. When people went home to work remotely, things got weird. The attack apparently focused on Belarus, Russia, the Ukraine, and also included Afghanistan. So a weird collection of targets. But it apparently started with spear phishing, which so many things do. And then they used an old Office vulnerability to deploy PortDoor. And PortDoor is a modern, backdoor Trojan. PortDoor apparently was also used in April of 2021 by a Chinese APT to target Russian defense contractors. That was a previous campaign. After they got in, they installed PortDoor. Then they come back in through that piece of malware, and they installed other malware, which included a whole list of things. But they installed a new one called Kotsum. And Kotsum is just, I guess, a new piece of malware that exploits an old 2017 vulnerability in Word. Probably all Office would work, though. And they went so far as to bundle the Word versions that were vulnerable with the malware. So they bundled Word 2007 for 32-bit systems or Word 2010 for 64-bit systems. So that's pretty, I guess, clever, because it kind of lends credence to it, I guess. Like, oh, yeah, we want you to read this, and we're going to include a copy of Word so you can read it. But anyway, after they did all the infiltration, the malware then basically extracts a bunch of data from the systems and then pushes it off to a server with a Chinese IP. Of course, they were still in these networks. Nobody knows exactly what all they did because they were able to compromise the security infrastructure. So, think about that again. If you're doing that kind of stuff, if you've got security infrastructure that's attached to public-facing stuff, that is really, really dangerous. You got management interfaces facing public-facing stuff, or even in your internal network. If they get in the internal network through some other source, they can get to those security interfaces, and bad things will ensue. A Microsoft warning was issued that said Windows-based devices that are running the newest supported processors are susceptible to data damage. And they kept talking about data damage, and I don't know if that means corruption, and it didn't really say in the article what that actually meant, but apparently information could be damaged somehow, and it was on Windows 11 and Server 2022. Now, it was related to the Vector Advanced Encryption Standard. So that's AES, XTS, and AX GCM, I think, ciphers. But that Vector Advanced Encryption Standard instruction set apparently had a problem with Windows 11 and Server 22. Oh, in fact, I have it written down here. In particular, devices that supported AES, XTS, and AX GCM block ciphers on hardware. So this is that hardware encryption chunk that's in the processor, may experience data loss, but it didn't actually, and I even wrote it down, I couldn't really figure out what exactly was going to happen to the data when this occurred. But apparently the issue was fixed in the May and June updates for Windows. But the warning, so this was kind of why I reported, the warning says that if you put those patches in, the AES-based operations may be up to 2 times slower once you install the fixes on Server 22 and Windows 11. So this would affect things like BitLocker or TLS encryption, throughput for writing to the disk, especially if it's encrypted kind of stuff. And again, back to BitLocker and other features that rely on that AES block cipher hardware to actually be enacted, in time and appropriately. They did say if you're experiencing these performance issues that you should install the June 23rd preview update or the July 12th security update for Windows 11 and Server 2022, and that hopefully will restore you to your initial performance metrics. So a whole bunch of stuff there. So if you're having any issues with that, or if you're using Windows 11 Server 2022 and you have current modern, cutting edge processors, you might want to check that article out. Lazarus is back. Lazarus is a North Korean APT that has started a new campaign. And this time they're back from the dead. They kind of vanish every now and then, but they're back from the dead to impersonate Coinbase employees now. And basically what they're doing in this campaign is what they usually do, which is they're targeting employees in this time the financial tech industry. So they're particularly interested in certain types of engineers and financial engineers that work on blockchain and other, cryptocurrency kind of stuff. And so what they do is they go on LinkedIn and they then identify people by their LinkedIn profiles and they send job offer, contacts. I don't know if you've ever gotten one of these things, but I'm always so paranoid when I get job offer or contact. I had somebody the other day contact me about possibly, coming to work for them as a consultant. And I spent like a while trying to validate that this person was legit, even up to and including calling the company and asking if they worked there, because I was like, this could be some kind of a setup scam. But they basically present job offers that look really lucrative, trying to get you to set up a preliminary discussion with them about this job. So Malwarebytes said that they're currently pretending to be from Coinbase, and they're targeting people who are suitable for engineering manager, product security type jobs. Now, what they do is then when you agree to, hear this offer, they immediately send you a PDF that supposedly has all the details of the job that they're going to offer you. So, this is this sweaty, I'm about to get a job kind of feeling. And you go, oh boy, here's this lucrative job offer. I can tell my boss to go straight to hell. And, I can go set their trash can on fire and do all those things that people do when they quit. That's what everybody does when they quit, right? Maybe that's why I never get asked back. I'm not sure. But anyway, so basically this PDF is not a PDF. Well, it's kind of a PDF, but it's an executable that pops a PDF open on the screen that, of course, you get to read. And the file that they include is named Coinbase_online_careers_2022_07.exe. And so when you double click it, obviously it runs. And it pops up a PDF, you run it, but it also loads a DLL that has a malicious file inside of it. The DLL then uses GitHub as a command and control server and can then download and execute whatever they've put in the directory up on the GitHub site. The attacks seem to be targeting financial sector employees, but in the past, they've used very similar tactics to target other industries, and they've used General Dynamics and Lockheed Martin as that was who they were posing as. And they obviously can switch identities pretty fast. They just go get a couple of logos and change their names. They have in the past, this year, in fact, have used cryptocurrency wallets that contain Trojans. They created fake investment apps that steal your deposit. And back in April, Lazarus was supposedly responsible for stealing over $617 million US dollars in Ethereum and USDC tokens, according to the FBI. The attack, that attack involved Axie Infinity, which is a blockchain-based game. And they traced, of course, this attack back to a PDF file that had a lucrative job offer that was being sent to one of Axie Infinity's engineers. So yeah, so if you get lucrative job offers, I guess ask yourself, is this too good to be true? And then turn it down, and the people are like, wow, we can't believe they turned this down. Validate, so don't click on files. We all know that. GwisinLocker is a new ransomware that targets Windows and Linux-based, and I found the headline of this very confusing. It says it targets Windows and Linux-based ESXi servers. And if you read it right and you know what happens, you read it correctly, but it's very easy to read that as like, wow, somebody's actually attacking ESXi? That's interesting. Not that it can't be done, but it's like wow, that's interesting. Now, that's not really what's going on. The title sounds like they're targeting ESXi, but the headline only makes sense when you read the whole article, which I don't like. But basically, there are no Windows ESXi servers, which I immediately was like, what? And there's no Linux ESXi servers, because ESXi is VMware's bare metal, right? I mean, that's their bare metal hypervisor. So there's no such thing as a Windows ESXi or a Linux ESXi. So then once you start thinking it through, you go back and read the headline, you go, oh, I guess they're talking about VMs. But anyway, the name of this, that GwisinLocker, Gwisin means ghost or ghost locker in Korean. It's a cool name. I like it. And it was apparently produced by a Korean threat actor. So it was not a big player, but it was somebody that seems at least to be Korean. And they said it was someone who speaks Korean well. So obviously there's documentation and things that probably have Korean references. The initial round of attacks coincided with Korean public holidays and occurred during early morning hours before business in Korea. So again, the article is concluding that this may be somebody who actually lives in South Korea. The attacks first appeared last month after multiple large pharmaceutical firms in Korea were compromised. OnLab published an analysis of the Windows encryptor that was included in this package, and Reversing Labs published the Linux version of the same thing. And so on the Windows side, basically this attack is an MSI installer, which has to be run from the command line. So it's a little different than a lot of stuff. You actually have to manually run it at the command line, which would imply the person was getting into the system somehow and doing this same kind of thing. But it has an embedded DLL, which is the actual ransomware encryptor. The attack targets Windows-based VMs, and it doesn't hit the ESXi itself, apparently. I couldn't find any reference that ESXi was involved in any way other than being the base platform, although it is targeting stuff that's running on ESXi. In the Linux case, the focus is, again, on ESXi virtual Linux servers and desktops that are sitting on VMware. I couldn't find any reference that this had anything whatsoever to do with VMware per se. So despite the headline, big ESXi letters. Apparently, the attacks are highly customized for each victim. They have the company name. They may have names of people in the company. They have a ransom note that's very, very, it's customized to the company. And they have unique extensions for all the encrypted files per victim. So the attacks so far have been targeting South Korean industry and healthcare. But of course, that doesn't mean they won't make this available to other people or that they can't expand their attack base. Now, I haven't been to Burger King in a while, and I don't really care for that type of fast food. Not that I eat healthy, don't get me wrong. I eat all kinds of horrible stuff, but I just don't really like fast food, but those chains anyway. But apparently, Burger King was sending out blank receipts earlier this morning to a lot of customers. So a customer tweeted a copy of the blank receipt and said they received it at 5 a.m. where they were asleep, and it basically said, thanks for ordering from Burger King. Your order will be ready for pickup soon. And so, I'm not sure what this is. It sounds like maybe something was going on, but the article said that at this time they didn't have a comment from Burger King. They didn't have any information at this time about where these receipts came from. only that customers in the U.S. and the U.K. had been reporting receiving them. They did say they were investigating this further. Restaurant Brands International owns Burger King, and they own a lot of other restaurants of that type, including Tim's. And Tim's Hortons had settled a privacy suit last week that was related to improper collection of customers' location data. And if you've never been to Tim's, it's sort of the Canadian version of Dunkin' Donuts, and that, like in New England. And I don't mean Dunkin' Donuts in Texas. I mean like Dunkin' Donuts in New England, which is different. It's the same thing, but it's handled differently. And if you're not from New England, Dunkin' Donuts is a donut and coffee shop that is apparently addictive to New Englanders because they line up in these massive queues to get coffee, which is really just coffee. But anyway, I did try it when I first moved here, and I tried it by accident because I was passing one. I was like, well, I want some coffee. I went in and ordered a large coffee at the drive-thru, and they said, you want regular coffee? And I was like, yes. Like the irregular coffee makes me break out in hives because it's mutated. But they didn't get that part. But I thought that meant black coffee when they said regular. But what regular coffee at Dunkin' Donut means is that they pour a little bit of coffee on top of like 4 or 6 tablespoons of sugar and a whole bunch of cream. So of course it's good. And it's also addictive. But it did make my heart kind of beat in 5/4 time for a minute. Like that kind of dun 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 dun, that kind of thing. Yeah, it makes you a little nervous. But anyway, they have a lot of them in New England. In fact, in my old town, you could see a Dunkin' Donuts from the parking lot of a different Dunkin' Donuts. That's how many of them are. And Tim's isn't quite that bad, but it kind of is. So I don't know what's going on at Burger King. I don't know what's going on with Tim Hortons. But this is probably something that's going to have some more. So if you get some of these receipts or notices, you may want to be careful with them. Because they also said they weren't even sure these came from Burger King. So they don't have a lot of info here. But if you get one of these, be warned. I know that was a lot for just warning you not to open stuff from Burger King, but whatever. This story was a little different to me. You don't see a lot of stories about crime in China because the government doesn't like that to be published. They don't like there to be indications that China is having this kind of problem or whatever. But this latest story was that a fraud claim in China said that a child was scammed out of 3,800 yuan, which is about $560. And this 15-year-old was approached by a scammer with the promise to assist in, you're going to love this, is to get around China's limit on video games. Now, if you don't know this, China has a law that limits minors to only 3 hours of online gaming, wait for it, per week. I was going, per day. Well, only 3 hours a day. What are you going to do? But no, 3 hours per week. So that's right, Chillin. You better get that raid done in 3 hours or you're done till next week. So, yeah. So here comes the scammer. So the scammer basically somehow contacted the victim, and they said they would arrange for them additional playtime if they could arrange payments from their parents' mobile. So guess what's a 15-year-old who's gonna just about to find the secret chamber of Nefertiti or something gonna do? Of course they did it. They forked over the renminbi, and the next thing you know, they got scammed. Well, it's not that simple, though, in China, because they basically monitor all connections to the internet. They monitor the games, the companies that make the games, the companies that are providing you with the game, the connection that you have to the game, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if it's out there, they're trying to monitor it. So you not only didn't get more hours in this case, you lost a bunch of cash. And, of course, now the government is looking for everyone involved. Apparently, the article goes on and talks about a lot of other gaming scams that are going on in China. And as I said, China manages really heavily all these connections and so forth, and they have pretty harsh sentencing guidelines. So if you're doing stuff like this in China, maybe don't do that. Yeah, but it was a really Western thing that you don't usually see about China. 2 hacks on the crypto industry resulted in nearly $200 million in losses and have affected more than 10,000 users. Solana reported last week that some of their wallets had been breached, and by some, they meant 7,700 or so. And Elliptic, who is a blockchain analysis firm, said that 5.2 million was stolen in Solana token and USD coin. It worries me because it is exploits rather than phishing that's causing all these crypto compromises, which is worrisome. Phishing we all know about. Spear phishing we know about. When you start seeing exploits that are in these, financial softwares, that's pretty scary. The company released a statement that said, quote, engineers are currently working with multiple security researchers and ecosystem teams to identify the root cause of the exploit, which is unknown at this time. Now, that makes you feel better about your bank account, right? The hack targeted wallets on Slope and Phantom, which are called hot wallets, which are always connected to the internet so that you can do super, super fast transaction. Solana was the 5th most popular token before a recent slide and was really well known for being a currency you could do rapid transactions with. Nomad, which is called a blockchain bridge, said that it had about $190 million extracted due to a hacker infiltrating its system. So again, not phishing necessarily, but somebody actually in the system. The attack was described as a, quote, free-for-all, since the attack code allowed anyone that had the code to copy the code and use it to steal crypto. So that, again, that really makes you feel good about that. Nomad said they had no idea where the money went, but they did set up a site, which I thought was pretty interesting, which would allow someone who was a white hat who had explored this problem to actually go in and redeposit the crypto back into their account, which I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Well, you may have heard Merck and Muffley was overthrown in the Duchy of Grand Fenwick last week, but I bet you didn't know that our old friend Jason was the one who did it. He has now declared himself the Grand Duke and Rampant Stallion of Fenwick, so please welcome His Royal Honor and Highness Jason Wood.
Hello, everybody. Doug, I expect appropriate tribute from you now.
It's on its way. The check's in the mail.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and keep on the bashing on the bad news for cryptocurrency and in that sector. Threat Post published an article yesterday, actually, that went into one group's current campaign that is targeting Coinbase users, attempting to steal cryptocurrency tokens from them, and has a mechanism for getting around or through the two-factor authentication defenses in Coinbase's software stack. Doug's talked about Lazarus Group, could it be them? Who knows? There's not even any speculation, much less any kind of assessment as to who's behind the campaign. And it's actually pretty very low tech in a number of ways of what they're doing, at least as far as the victim interaction. Some of the defenses were kind of interesting, which is why I decided to bring this one up. The attack itself is a straight up phishing, a scam. Basically a Coinbase user gets an email, dire warnings. Oh my goodness, your account is about to be suspended or disabled or something or other. There's a transaction you need to confirm or examine, and the victim panics. And they, of course, click the link, in spite of the fact that this link probably looks pretty wonky and definitely probably doesn't say Coinbase.com. It looks pretty dodgy. This takes them to a web page that does look like Coinbase's site, prompts them for the username and password. The victim rapidly types it in, hoping to head off whatever's going on here, and the attacker, of course, gets those credentials and just relays them onto to Coinbase. Now, this initiates the mechanism for the second factor of authentication. The user gets a text message or whatever saying, hey, here's your code. Well, they're looking now at a web page on the attacker's site that is prompting them for that code. So they type that in, and now the attackers have that, and they've basically taken over the account, and victims' tokens start disappearing off all into the place. They have an automated process apparently for making these transactions, as the researchers at Pixum Software were talking about potentially making hundreds or even thousands of transactions to basically scramble the tokens and make them disappear. But they did do it a little bit further with the attack. They send them another phishing message saying, oh my goodness, guess what? Your account has been disabled. You need to talk to customer support. And so they click on that link. And here is now a chat function where they're actually talking to the attacker, pretending to be somebody from Coinbase. And they run the victim through the hamster wheel of pain for a while, just kind of dragging the process out, basically buying themselves time for all of the transactions to take place and the tokens to really disappear. Once it's all done, the chat gets closed down abruptly, and the entire phishing page disappears. Game over at this point. Nothing terribly exciting about this, right? This is just kind of the typical, we capture the credentials, we just have an extra step to capture the code that you get texted to you or whatever. what was kind of interesting to me was the lengths that the attacker went after that to make it difficult for people to analyze or investigate what is going on in this particular attack or campaign. They took a number of steps to make this much more difficult for researchers or investigators. First off, the domains themselves, according to Pixum, are only online for a very short time. They were quoted as saying that their estimates place the majority of the pages being available on the internet for less than 2 hours. So, very short life. Pop it up, send the message out. See how they keep it up for a very short period of time to see if they get a response and then tear it all down, or they get somebody who responds and they run them through the process and they tear it down again. So by the time the researchers find out about this in the first place, and they get a hold of the URL, the site's already gone and doesn't exist anymore. So that's one of their defenses. They're just using speed to stay ahead of defenders. The next defense that the attackers used was actually kind of, I don't know, I thought this one was kind of different. In some of the recon, I guess, that it indicates that's going on. Basically, they're guessing, what IP range do we think this person is going to be coming from, or where's their geolocation? And then they're putting in ACLs on these websites to prevent anybody who doesn't match that profile from actually accessing the site. So if the researcher does get a hold of it in time to try and do an investigation into it, they've got to run into this next step where they have to be coming from the right IP range or be in the same approximate place in the country where the victim is at or where they think the victim is at, to basically do their analysis. So that really makes that difficult as well. And again, I thought that was really interesting just from the idea of some recon here about the user you're going after to get this kind of information. Now, while this campaign is aimed at the users of Coinbase, this is obviously something that could work against anybody that's, got something that you can phish and go after the second factor authentication or text messages or whatever to do that. Even an authenticator, they open up the app and they punch in those codes and away they go. This one just happened to focus on a particular cryptocurrency exchange that has about 89 million users reportedly. So it's a big target and, potentially a lot of money here. So it's just another example of the attackers, they're just putting new twists on old things and continuing to find success with it. If this is interest to you, go ahead and check out the show notes, got the link there. And with that, I'll return you back over to Doug for his metal rendition of Old MacDonald Had a Crypto Miner.
Yeah, I should do. I need a filter to do that though. Yeah, the death metal version of that. That would be fun, actually. Yeah, thank you, Jason. I get distracted easily if you haven't noticed. All right, and finally, if you ever spent your allowance playing Super Punch Out or Punch Out. And I hated this game because I worked in an arcade and we had to listen to it go, buddy blow, buddy blow, buddy blow. It just did that all the time until you were like crazed. But anyway, the game, which was originally in arcades back in the 80s, became a classic in bars and arcades everywhere back then. And then it later moved, of course, to the console platforms in the 90s. And so one of the things about this game that was kind of interesting was that despite the fact that it was in bars and clubs and arcades where people really like to play two-player games, and of course, if you play two players, you have to pay twice as much, and that kind of stuff, they didn't have it. And people used to ask me all the time when I worked at arcade, they're like, does this have a two-player mode? No, it doesn't. Shut up. I finally put a sign on it that said no two-player mode. I really did that. But you could only play those cartoon AI guys. But even at home, then, when it came out on console, you would have thought they would have put two-player mode in it so, people could sit there and play with their controllers. But no. But this week, after 30 years, an account called @NewCheats News on Twitter posted a series of button combos on Super Nintendo Classic Edition that would, and there were some other platforms too, that would allow you to switch this into two-player mode. It's a cool hack because they found a lost mode that was probably some kind of maintenance or testing thing when they were developing the game, but it will allow you to virtually smack each other around instead of having to play the AI. And that's the news. Thanks, Jason, and we'll see you Friday for the wrap-up show.